Right, welcome to the visual div.
Were you waiting for? Were you
I
waiting for me?
was waiting for you to say that. I was
You were
like
teeing
trying
me
to.
up there.
I was trying to share the love. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, like we're that professional at this stage that we can just riff these things.
Oh
Maybe the
yeah.
next time it should be you say D, I say visual, and then you say div. And we can have like a fake round
Yeah.
of applause.
Yeah. We'll share the love every time. But anyway, yeah. Welcome to the visual div, second episode. My name's Matt, and I'm with my co-host Alan. How you doing today, Alan?
Yeah, good. Can't complain. I think it's pissing rain outside, but I don't know. I'm in like this. I've got two offices. I've got an office at home.
That's very
It's like
fancy.
external to the
Two
house, and
offices.
it looks well. It overlooks like the ocean, and then I'm in this like box in town that it feels more like a casino. So so I don't know if I don't even know what time it is.
Well, I think it's safe to assume that it's raining, and it's a bonus if it's not. I think on the west coast at this time of year.
Yeah,
No?
well,
Yeah.
it's the weather. I kind of look at the weather differently because I look for ocean swells, and it's really good this week. So it doesn't matter if it's sunny or raining. It's like all the surfers are happy. So
And
yeah,
there was us saying at the start before we pressed record that we weren't going to talk about the weather, and we just straight away talked about the
we
weather.
did not. It's not on the taboo list.
Uh,
Taboo list. We had a list of stuff we were going to talk about. We didn't say we wouldn't talk about the weather.
Very true, very true. Anyway, like this week, it's not really this week. We've already recorded one this week. Today we're going to try and convey our thoughts about the new Webflow UI. So the new logo, the new website, the new everything, like the new look and feel, and then probably the biggest talking point from the Webflow conf in social circles is the designer. So it's obviously had a facelift, and there's lots of things now. We've had a week or so to play with it. Lots of things that we love, and lots of things that we don't love as much. So maybe we can start with the logo.
Well,
Do you like
logo
it?
to me, when I saw it first, I was like, this is weird. Honestly, the first time I saw it. But that's when something changes. You get a little bit of a shock. But when Vlad did the talk at the conference, and he had it just timed to perfection, explaining the new direction, the new visual direction of Webflow, I literally gasped when the logo came together. It was just so well timed. It was like when a comedian just like puts out a really well timed joke. Just the way he delivered the explanation behind the logo and the developer animator Java, it was the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript kind of approach, and I was like, "What?" So once I saw that and heard that, I was like, "This logo is class. It's so cool."
But
And
you're also, it's fair to say, you got very excited about the whole direction of, a pro developer tool. That I'm not surprised that you also love the logo because it represents the kind of building blocks. It didn't have any reference to design per se, as like we're going to make it easier to design stuff. It had all the references were to more like the building blocks, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, which is kind of your bread and butter wheelhouse. You geek out on that stuff.
maybe you're right. Maybe it was the whole kind of experience of
Yeah.
the whole talk, which I suppose is an incredibly well written talk and presentation. That crescendo. Well, that was the crescendo for me. Was that the movement of the three elements of the W into the logo? I was just like, I did not see this coming.
Yeah.
Well done. Like
well
completely
done, yeah.
blindsided. It was like, when a movie, it's like at the end of Scooby Doo when they pull off the mask. I was like, what? So yeah, it was great. I
Yeah. See, from my point of view, it was an odd one because a lot of logos go through the iterations, don't they? You know, they release a new logo or a new brand look and feel, and I don't think professionally, at least, I've not been exposed to something where I've been so like Webflow is the middle of every day of my working week. Webflow is, I wake up thinking about Webflow, what I'm doing in Webflow. It's just part of my thing now. So maybe I was a little bit taken aback by it. Whoa, where's no? I want Webflow. I don't want this this new thing. I just want
I want
Webflow
that
was all
curvy
right.
W.
Yeah, I want something. I want the thing that I'm used to.
Yeah.
And I guess initial thoughts were like, you don't need to change it. There's nothing broken. And then I guess as you start looking into it a bit more and you see what, like the guys like Waldo have done with their 3D printing and you go, actually, well done, guys. Like you've hit the nail on the head. This is pretty cool. And
Yeah.
and also randomly, I think there was a lot of Twitter stuff going on about do you like it and whatnot. And I think I even looked, it's like the Framer logo. It's got a bit of Framer logo to it, which is, it's kind of got the angles and which is quite interesting. But yeah, no, I think
I
overall,
didn't see that connection to be honest, but yeah, there's probably some similarity with the symmetry.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
just a bit more angled, I suppose. The curves have gone. The curves were 5 years ago curves now, aren't they? Now it's all the logos are angled and fonts are angled, and it's all a bit. Cars are angled. It's just we're in an
Everything's sharp.
angled world. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but then obviously you got the website. So the logo it took all of the sort of headline, but then behind that you've got a brand new website. You've got like the Webflow University that everyone loves to love. Had a complete revamp in like not just the UI but how you use it. Had a nice little sidebar and like I know Mackenzie Child, who I've been following for years. Like I've got his poster up in my office. It's not well, it fell down the other day. I haven't put it back up, but it's
You can't start saying that you're a fanboy and you have a poster up and then explain that it's on the ground.
yeah. That's a story of my DIY life. I think is I buy cheap frames from IKEA, and when they fall down, I realise that I just
Hey,
made a
hang
mistake.
on a second. IKEA is a wonderful company, and if they wish to sponsor us, like, awesome. So take that back.
Yeah, IKEA frames last at least 6 months in my rickety house. No, but yeah, just seeing all that stuff and then realizing the depth of work, because we work on sites all the time and we know how much work goes into a brand new design, let alone a redesign. And they're redesigning probably one of the biggest sites, product sites out there in terms of number of pages, contact points, pricing pages, this page, that page, and like that was pretty impressive. And I think they nailed that one, pretty good.
Yeah, I think I've been incredibly impressed with all of their iterations of all of their websites. They just hit the nail on the head pretty much every time, and at the same time they kind of sometimes they challenge like a bit of what one would think a certain section should or should not look like, which I really enjoy. But then at the same time, hitting all the correct markers in terms of UX of having the right elements in the right places, but just challenge the way they're positioned. It's awesome. They've
Yeah,
always been good at that. So in fairness to them. So yeah, the new site is I give it a thumbs up, but I've given
yeah.
them all thumbs up.
We're not designers by trade, I guess. We're not sort of we're more developers turned dev designers rather than designers turned designer devs. That's the way to say it. But which means that maybe our opinion doesn't count too much. But I think it's the fact that it does what it says on the tin really, really well, and it hasn't
So
really put a
people
foot
can
wrong.
stop listening now because our opinion doesn't
Yeah,
count.
yeah. Well, no, keep listening because we're going into the designer next, and our opinion definitely counts in the designer because we are developers who
So
love.
I
Yeah.
was actually I had a quick going back to the conference, the Webflow staff were so sound. They were so approachable, easy to talk with. Took on board a lot of the challenges that people put towards them, because like we were saying in the last episode, there's so many people out there using Webflow for so many different creative reasons, or their creativity is bringing them down different avenues. So then people would have very specific kind of questions towards the limitations that Webflow has in their particular expertise. So like they were really, really open with, initially having the AMA, and then you could go up and ask them quite frankly what their plans were, and they were quite forthright in their response, and they didn't bullshit us really. They were like, this is how far one thing is going. If someone wants to take it to the next level, well, you can go via the app route, the Webflow app route. So yeah, it was the reason I'm saying this is because I was talking to Vlad, and I was just like, so why haven't you changed the name of the designer to the developer? Huh? Huh?
What did he say though? What was his? Can you remember what he said?
He just started laughing, and he kind of like, just was like, oh yeah, maybe. But no, he just started laughing because we were kind of, I was just saying about how I enjoyed how the marketing language was now developer focused and visual developer focused. And I was like, oh, why didn't you change the name of the designer to the developer? And we just had a bit of a giggle about it. So maybe that's the next step. Or maybe there will be a designer and there will be a developer. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I like going to that AMA. I thought that they were very impressive about. They didn't bring their political game, did they? Where they were just spamming off, like with sort of generic responses. They actually dug in. They gave little insights into what was coming, or when something wasn't coming down the line. I remember, one of the guys asked about e-commerce. And then Alan, who's used to work at Shopify, I think, he basically was honest and said, we could, but it's difficult. It's a big, there's lots of little things that add up to lots of little things that is lots of little things. And to get lots of little things right for something like e-commerce is a lot of work. And they didn't just go, hey, wait and see, or we might do that in the future. Or they were dead honest, which was pretty cool. But I don't know, there's the positive side of that. I think the other side of it, and I think maybe we'll go into it with the critique of the designer, what we think of the new designer. But there is a little, in my mind at least, there's a little bit of disappointment with some of the, half-baked is a bit of a strong word, but releasing some things in a sort of conference style, what's the word? Rotation. Is that some of the things feel like they got released a bit earlier than they needed to be, because they're missing bits and bobs. But other than that, I think that, the guys were very approachable, very honest, and it built up a lot of favor. So my confidence levels for the Webflow team have just gone through the roof, which is
I really liked how. I think it might have been how Alan said it. It's probably Alan who said this, that what they're not going to do is build something that doesn't work, but they'll build something that definitely works but has limitations. They'd rather build something highly, to the highest standard possible, and if that means there's limitations in it, so be it. But they're not going to, build something that has bugs in it, essentially.
Yeah. Okay, so talking about what they built, what were your initial impressions on the new designer UI, apart from the name, obviously?
Huge disappointment with the name. The initial ones were like, "Whoa, this is cool." It looks more like something like VS Code in dark mode, which was the initial thoughts. That was my first kind of thinking about it, and the like I know there was a bit of chat about the new icons and stuff, and I was like, I actually really liked it all. Like I liked the initial impressions were that yeah, it looks good, it looks slick, looks more like a developer. um, and then those things were great. So, but then when I started using it, straight away I got annoyed because I was trying to preview and the preview button got moved. And I was just like, "Where's the preview button?" And like, I know it's only a small thing. They moved it up from whatever it was, the top left of screen to the top right of screen. But when you're used to it being up in top left, you're just that's where your brain goes. Like my brain is just trained to go up there to click on the preview, and then I found it, whatever, and yeah, okay, and I'm still looking for the preview button in its old position, so I haven't retrained my brain. And something happened the other day that tried to click preview, and I clicked something else. So it is
Yeah,
yeah,
I think
something else.
the hot spot of where preview is has got a lot going on around it. I
Yeah.
think it's a little less on its own, ready to go. From what I can remember, preview was the holy grail of there's preview, and you could just your muscle memory got there relatively quickly.
Hmm.
Whereas now you have to be a little bit more precise to click on it, because if you don't, you might click on something else.
Yeah, and I've definitely done that. Like I've
Yeah.
definitely clicked on something else.
I
So
remember I remember years ago having a debate with a designer who loved their icons and wanted to roll out this new icon language onto the product that we were building. And I think it's called is it called affordance, where something the relationship between what something looks like and what it means to everyone is quite wide. So if you
hmm,
put an icon of a person, what does it mean? Does it mean it's an account? Does it mean login? Does it mean log out? Does it mean profile? There's lots of things that, whereas if you put a play button, like it's play. Play means play means play. It's like it's been on VHS recorders from when we were kids, all the way up to YouTube, all the way up to your phones, like like everything. On my kids' toys, there is a play button, and I know exactly. They know what it means, and they're only 2 years old, you know. Whereas, so the affordance of icons is really important. And before it
hmm,
said preview, and now it's just a play button, and it's like, what does play even mean? I'm not playing a video. I'm previewing something. So why don't that
hmm,
confused me a little bit. I thought preview means preview, especially when you're a client who maybe doesn't use the tool very often. When I say, "Hey, just all you have to do is preview," and they go, where's preview? I don't want to press the play button because what does the play button do?" So it did throw me, and it still throws me a little bit. It's like I'm not playing the website; I'm previewing the website. So,
hmm.
um, so that's but there's no preview icon really, is there? There's no an icon that goes. So yeah, I'm with you on that one. I think that's a
-1.
yeah -1. Yeah. Okay.
So
What's your
like
next one then?
and the new UI as well. The I always thought of the designer in terms of HTML and CSS, that the HTML was over on the left of screen and the CSS was over on the right. That's the way I always kind of my mind approached it.
Yeah.
So if you go over to the left, you've got the elements in the navigator. You open up the navigator, and there's your HTML essentially. And then over on the right hand side, you've got your styles, and that's when you can start putting in your classes. And underneath, you put in your class, and then underneath all of that is the way we create CSS. So that was always the way I looked at it and approached it. And I know there's other things, like you've got settings where you and things get more complex, but on a very simple initial view of the designer. And if I was to ever explain it to someone, this is how I would explain it. Um, and the other day I was looking to clean up my classes, and I literally couldn't find it. I just couldn't find it. I was like, where it is? I had to Google how how to, because I was like, they can't have got rid of this feature. Like, and then found it over in where I would think the HTML is. It's now over on left of screen, the where you go
Yeah.
to find how you clean your classes. And um I don't know. That was, I suppose, these are things that when you're so used to using a tool and then they change it, and maybe they had like an explanation. Oh, here's the new UI. This is where things have moved to. But if they did that, I skipped it. I definitely didn't look at it. So if there was really clear and concise instructions, I ignored them. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry to the team if they did provide
No,
that.
no, I'm completely with you. I never thought about it as like HTML on one side and CSS on the other. I never thought about it like that. But come to think of it, that's the way it worked. And if you think like cleaning up your style classes should be where your style classes are, it feels logical. When you're on a bigger screen, it feels like first world problems, but it's a long way. It's a long way away to clean up your styles. But also, variables have the same issue. Is that you're mostly working with variables when you're thinking about styling. Whether it's using a variable or creating a new variable, it's always done on the right hand side of the. You think it's always done down there. The color palettes were there. Like everything is done on that little right hand side. It's almost like your safe space, isn't it? You're not going to mess around with the building blocks. The only thing that is over there that could be on the other side is maybe attributes. But again, it's
No,
like
not really, because in the way that, like, if you would think of structuring a site, you've got your HTML, your CSS, and then you've got your JavaScript folder. So, like, having the attributes, maybe underneath the settings, I think it makes sense because, you know, the interactions is essentially like a jQuery script. So it's all kind of there, like the target of the JavaScript is there.
yeah.
So that makes sense. But I also see how you could click on an element on the other side, and that's where you add the attributes
Yeah,
to it.
I
But again,
think
that could just be
I
that I'm
suppose
used to it.
yeah, but and think about like all other software tend to have this structure, don't they? Of like the layers
Hmm.
and then the styling of the layers or the settings for those layers on something. But the variables one is interesting, and I think it's something that has been picked up on Twitter. It's like it's huge. The window for a variable is huge. There's so much space that they're going to fill somehow,
Hmm.
and to create a new variable, you have to go all the way up to the top, click it, and then find where that is. It's not that easy to find sometimes. That something is ready for you to edit, and then you have to edit it, and then it moves into the slot. Say you have folders, moves into the slot that it's been selected for. It's just an interesting interest. It's just an interesting way to do it, and it kind of doesn't work. Like you think if you click a new variable, it would come up with a little modal where you could just boom, boom, boom. But then I don't know. I'm sure they got more plans because I think it's one of my bugbears.
That's really interesting because, like, I haven't used variables at all for fonts or any kind of for fonts or the other options. I've only used it for colors at the moment, and I've only been adding the variables through the color selector on the right hand side. So we've been using it completely differently, actually, just by the way you described it. And
Well,
I've
yeah, you can do that, can't you? You can add it there.
and with that, there was a little bit of an issue. I was finding a little bit of an issue where you almost have to like deselect you do have to deselect the variable if you want to add in like a new color that isn't a part of your variable library yet. So, and I suppose because of the project I'm working on the moment, it's got a completely new reskin and CSS and color palette. But I know it works really. I've noticed with the colors though, it works really well. Like it changes things um
Yeah,
across the whole product.
the power for colors for variables is really good. Now I know we're going a bit off tangent here to the functionality of variables, but it's probably it is a bugbear for quite a few people. Well, I'm a bit of a champion for being the bugbear because
So
variables
when
for
you
colors.
say that Twitter was
Yeah,
discussing this, it was you were discussing this on Twitter.
yeah. I
Were you
wanted
just
people
arguing
to
with
discuss it.
yourself on Twitter?
Yeah, I did. I was retweeting myself about my complaints about variables, and therefore it's an important thing to talk about.
Yeah.
um, but I think the variables. Yeah, the variables is a little bee in my bonnet about variables because I think you're right. The colors work well. There's a few things like you can't reorder them when you do them. So when you present it to a client in the context of a style guide, for example, you might do gradients of a color, but once you've started creating them, you've got to recreate them and then you're in trouble. But the biggest thing I find is the lack of mobile, sorry, not mobile, but lack of support for breakpoints in the same way that CSS variables works in the code world. Where
Hmm.
that's a big part of it is being able to say, text large is 20 pixels on desktop and it's 20 pixels on tablet and it's only 18 pixels on mobile. And the fact that, like with the colors, as you said, you change the color, you change the variable and it just propagates across everything. Now with the current variable setup, you have to create another variable for the smaller breakpoints and then attach that to all the classes that you want that to use. And that's kind of defeats the object of the now, like people have said, yes, just create all these variables. Yeah, you can do it, but that big space in the variables window suggests that there are more updates coming, and if the update is they now support breakpoints, we have to unattach all of these things, delete loads of variables, and re-put them in a different way, and that feels like it's a false start. It feels like, right, we're going, let's go, and then you get halfway up the road and you realize you've forgotten your bags, so you have to go all the way back and start again.
Yeah.
So that really that kind of plays into this narrative that I have, which is like, was it ready to be released?
I'm sensing you're a little bit annoyed by this, Matt.
Well, I
I don't
I
know. I
have
don't know.
his.
There's something in the air that says there's something that's troubling you. Would you like to talk about it?
I would like to talk about it, Alan. Is now a good time?
It is a good time.
No, I have history here. So when I was part of an enterprise agency, we got asked to do some sort of part of some beta groups, and one of them was branching. And having worked in the product teams, the engineering teams before of other companies who do who use version control with GitHub, with Git and GitHub, or I was pretty familiar with the benefits of branching. And when we were going through the product launch, or helping the guys with the product launch, we got our hands on this thing, and there were big roadblocks to it being useful in our team setting, and maybe in other team settings, anyway. Long and short of it was that all got released anyway, and we did never use branching because it was useless in the way it had been built. And the variables brought me back to that point. It was like, has someone not used this for 2 or 3 weeks on a bigger project before releasing it, or has it been just this? The bit that we designed as well. I'm like, it's horrible to say this, but like, has the product team gone through this? These are the use cases that we need to have in the initial release to make it work properly, and then we've got other, reordering the variables or this or that or that. That's great, but those are nice to haves. Quality of life stuff. This is a critical thing that actually means that variables have a bit of a dead end, and it felt like it was. We need a slide to fill in. It's obviously not. Having met all the guys, I know it's not. But here's a slide about variables for the Webflow conf. We need to have it released. Let's release something.
Yeah, but this kind of goes back to what I was saying. Like the colors, variables for colors work. So
I know, but they should have just released colors. And they should have just released colors.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah, variables for colors.
Because you can't do line height. You can't do line height on certain, like if you want to put 1.1 with no unit for line height, you can't do that in variables. So half of the typography stuff that you're used to doing is dead in the water. You then have to do it the other way. And mixing systems like that, mixing approaches is a recipe for chaos in our own world, let alone when we're handing it off to internal teams. Or anyway, yeah, I've had my therapy session. Thanks very much. I will be positive for the rest. Apart from the blurry, it's blurry.
What's blurry?
The UI is blurry. I've got it's too. Like on my Retina screen, it's nice and crisp.
Yeah.
On my Dell HD, which for all intents and purposes has made me feel like I've got 20/20 vision for the last few years. It's blurry. Like, you know, I woke up the next day, opened the designer up, and we're like, I need to go and get my eyes tested because I can't see these icons. They're like,
well,
like you've just gone blurry as if our recording software is listening to us. You've just gone a little bit blurry on the camera. But that's what the Webflow Designer. I did some tweaks on it, and it's just not crisp.
Honestly, I haven't noticed that. I'm actually looking at the designer here, and
no, it's not something that just myself, and I think the guys have picked up on it. But it just felt like they've gone one or two pixels too small, and they haven't tested it across maybe slight. And I'm privileged enough that I can have a nice big screen, and I've got a MacBook. But there's a huge amount of people that don't have Retina screens. Well, maybe I don't know what a Retina screen is these days.
Okay. So it's on a smaller screen. It might be a bit blurry.
Yeah,
maybe.
It's not so much. It's more the resolution, but yeah, it was disappointing because again, it wasn't so much it doesn't look good. It was more this kind of hasn't been tested, and that kind of just gives you a little bit of nightmares with, like, memberships was rolled out, logic was rolled out, variables was rolled out. It just gives me a little bit of I don't know what's the word, nervousness about every announcement and how it kind of actually plays out, because it doesn't have to be perfect, but we're in a world now where my livelihood relies on this, and if there's like a few little missteps, they kind of add up a little bit, and I'm like, maybe they just need a few more checks and balances before they release it out into the world. Just because it's important that these things, and I don't think it's, maybe me being a bit naive, but I don't think it's that hard to get those little things right, because they make a big impact.
Yeah, well, like I can't really comment on the blurriness or lack thereof of the icons in the UI, because I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
So maybe that's a bit selfish of me, but I haven't noticed it. So I let's just cut out that rant because I don't care. No, but I get you. Like, it is incredibly important, especially when you got to pay your mortgage and feed your kids. So there is I suppose, it's not worth using certain features like across the board just yet. And like, even when it comes to membership and logic, like it's good for a certain amount of use cases, and it goes to a certain standard, and it means you don't. And it's also a part of it's not an additional, like, it's not an add-on, like, so they've given it to us in the hosting packages. It's not like they're charging through the nose for it, and then it's not doing what Make does or MemberStack. It's a good solution up to a certain use case, and then you need to go elsewhere. And this is, I know we were talking about the UI there, but this is one of the things I really like. Webflow haven't closed the technology. Like, you can use anything, pretty much anything, in conjunction with Webflow. Like, if you were using, try to taken a technology into Shopify or Wix or Squarespace that isn't, in their app store, and it's pretty. It's not easy, So there would be more annoyance for certain, and my part for certain things, if the ability to do it wasn't there. So this kind of goes back to variables. If you want to do variables right, you can do it with CSS. That costs like a custom embed. Like if you were to, they're still, so they're not preventing us doing variables the way you're suggesting.
No,
it's
that's
just
very
the
true.
UI isn't at that standard yet. So like it would be a complete pain in the arse if they actively prevented you from doing that. So yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. That's a good point.
That would be my kind of take on those.
I'm just
kind
having
of things,
a grumble, Alan. I'm just having a grumble.
Much better
I'm just having my grumble for the day. Just let me grumble. Maybe I need another coffee. No, only joking. But yeah, no. Generally, I don't. It hasn't had a huge impact on me, the designer per se. There's a few bits and bobs that I like and I don't like, but to be honest, which is kind of nice. They haven't thrown everything out and started again. They built on it, which is nice.
The best part of the new UI and the new CSS options is the ratio. That's so cool. Like they've just added in aspect ratio. It's just brilliant. Images, you can make them responsive and fit their aspect ratio across devices, and that can be responsive. Like you can change the aspect ratio across devices, across breakpoints. It's such a cool feature. Like before, for me to do like a responsive, an aspect ratio of an image, what I tended to do was wrap the image, have a div with, padding of the ratio that I wanted, make that relative, throw the image inside it, and make the image absolute, and give it, make it a cover, like fit it as a cover. And now you don't have to do that. It's awesome. Like that's an amazing update.
Yeah, interesting that. Have you looked behind the scenes? What's actually happening behind the scenes when that?
It's the correct way that an aspect should be done. Aspect ratio should be done in CSS.
Ah, okay. So because aspect ratios have always been one of those CSS things that is quite, Stack Overflow is probably one of the most searched for. How do you make it do widescreen, and always stick widescreen? So yeah, it'd be interesting to see, because you can't do that natively in CSS, can you?
Mm-hmm. You can.
You can. Okay. Yeah. So I missed that on the.
That's the thing with, like, even though we have this UI and it's got like all these buttons helping us write CSS, like Webflow does not prevent you writing, as far as I can tell. Like I haven't noticed any CSS functionality that Webflow has prevented.
No. I wasn't sure if it was one of those sort of quick stack moments where it's sort of it's hacking away a little bit at its aspect ratio is going, hey, you can do aspect ratio, but actually it's not really a thing. But actually it's a CSS attribute, isn't it? Aspect ratio. Yeah, which I didn't actually know that. Didn't know that it was a CSS. So I'm learning. That's another thing, and I know we're talking about the UI, and I know they're coming up with custom CSS soon as well. Brilliant. They said they're coming soon, and they're obviously working on it and I love that approach. It's like, it's coming soon. We're not quite ready yet. Happy days. That I love. But something that we talked about, I think at like 10 o'clock at night after the Webflow, at the end of the Webflow conf, was because it's becoming more developer friendly, developer focused. There's going to be a lot of us who use Webflow that don't have a background in traditional CSS, JavaScript, HTML terminology. And the fact that I think Webflow is such a great platform for introducing yourself to those terminologies.
Mhm.
There are certain things that maybe it's kind of avoiding, like style selector. Why not call that a class, for example? Do they need to call it a class? Maybe in the future they'll call it a class rather than a style selector.
And do
Those.
you know what? Like the amount of times that I'm talking about classes and I accidentally use the word style. And
Yeah,
that's, yeah. So there, I even think I did a YouTube video the other day and I kept saying style, style, style instead of class and like
it,
mixing them up. And it's like, yeah. So like that's because of Webflow because I keep seeing the word style. Add a style. No, it's like you're adding a class and you're,
and obviously in Ireland, when you say something's good, you say something's. A lot of people say it's class.
it is class.
It's
Yeah.
class.
So maybe they've done that for the Irish market to make sure that
Yeah,
we understand the difference between how class something is and putting a class on
yeah.
something.
These styles are class. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. No, but
Technically, there's styles in the classes.
yeah, these classes are class. No, 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 no. These styles are class. Yeah, they're helping us. Um, no, no, but I think we were talking about how you could use Webflow to actually, and it's something that I think you were talking about animations and going, okay, what's behind the animations and how do they work in the browser? And things like they assign IDs. So when you do selected element,
Hmm,
it assigns an ID to allow that animation to hook onto that element.
hmm.
And we don't see any of that happening. And unless you really want to dive below it, it's actually quite hard to know that. There's, Webflow, it would be a big job to try and do this, but Webflow don't don't visualize that bit of it. They sort of abstract some bits, don't they?
Well, yeah. Well, that's kind of that would be the same with
Yeah.
like if you're using VS Code. Like VS Code doesn't teach you how to use HTML, CSS, and JavaScript and folders. And
No,
like
you are writing it. You're like, by the fact that you're writing it, it's not abstracted. Actually, to be honest, like if you're
you
using
can write whatever you want in there, and it'll
yeah, you
if
can have. There is a lot of abstraction actually. If you're using a library or a
Hmm.
yeah. So I guess there is. Yeah, I guess what we were talking about is there room here now to where the UI in Webflow can start moving a little bit more towards the development terminology in a way that would make it easy for that kind of gap to, because if you start writing, say you use Slater, for example, and Slater
Mhm.
start giving you all this lovely code, JavaScript code, and it starts spurting out classes, and you're
Mhm.
like, what? Like, what is that? What is that as a class? What is a class? What is an ID?
Mm.
All that kind of stuff. So there's
Okay,
definitely,
so you're
yeah,
saying like the understanding of using like JavaScript to target an element by targeting selecting a class. That
class,
kind of
yeah,
understanding.
yeah. Because
Yeah.
to be honest, they use attributes, custom attributes. There's a few things that are reserved for obvious reasons, or some non-obvious reasons. Um, but there's certain things that make sense, and then certain things where they don't use the same terminology. And it's like variables is a good way. It uses the same terminology. Class, we've said, doesn't use the same terminology.
Hmm.
Um, the DOM thing that came out, that was interesting because that brings a whole lot of a lot of the memes that are flying around like web bay is like it's just it's just HTML5. It was like it's not this DOM thing, it's super cool now that everyone's and all the apps coming out and like you can add tables, you can add SVG tags and all this kind of stuff. It's super interesting. That I wonder how the UI will transition in that respect, because like you look at the image, we've got onto this with the image ratios. Like you have what's happening, like it has a widescreen or a landscape or a portrait, and they are CSS attributes. That's a CSS attribute. Is the aspect ratio. So all it's doing is giving you a different aspect ratio. I wonder if they just call it aspect ratio instead of ratio, for example. Those kind of things. But anyway,
So like maybe the language could be evolved to be closer to what more developer focused. But like, listen, we're just after talking about how they moved the preview button over from the top right to the top left, and we're just like, our world is collapsing. Imagine now if they just started changing absolutely the whole language in the whole, and you just turn up one day and it's like, oh, it's class selector, and it says aspect ratio instead of ratio. You'd lose your mind.
Yeah,
So they have
I'd
to
have to
be.
do I'd have to do an episode on my own just complaining about the changes.
Maybe you could do like a double screen, good Matt, bad Matt, talking to himself.
I always wonder, do I do that when I'm walking the dog in the park? Do people think that I'm talking to myself? Because some people walking down the road and they're normal people, and they look like they're talking to themselves. I'm sure I do that when I'm walking around the supermarket.
I just love that line. Do you know the way some people, when they're walking down the road, are normal people?
Well,
You're
yeah.
assuming that everybody else, that the majority of people are not normal.
No, like I like that. I was on the bus. I don't know. I was on the bus the other day, and it was obvious that that person, was
was
saying.
thinking about HTML and CSS and was trying to figure out a problem in their mind.
No, they were saying stuff out loud that was quite controversial. But I'm saying I feel like sometimes I'm walking through the park and my lips are moving, and it's replicating what's in my head.
So you're just screaming controversial stuff in like Webflow language.
Oh,
the DOM's just an HTML element.
Yeah. Damn.
It just renders a div.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, maybe we'll try that next time. Just keep an eye on what I'm talking about while I'm not making any noise. Anyway. But yeah, overall, I think the UI uncontroversial. It's not revolutionary. It's more of an evolution. And apart from the resolution issues, which I think a lot of other people have flagged, I think it was generally probably they've moved a lot of stuff around in the background to allow for further product development that would make room for new features, and obviously they've got more things coming down the line. And then you've got the web apps as well that got released a few months ago that are now there, and that had to be considered in terms of like the look and feel and how things are styled, which is like they've styled it super interestingly, the way they style it and the way they position apps and how it integrates with the designer. I'm still not 100% sure they've nailed that bit of it. It looks like a modal, but it isn't really a modal. So there's a few things there that I think they'll need to work on, but hopefully they have some sort of feedback loop. I don't know how they can, the guys there collect feedback about people's perception of how the UI is working. Maybe they have heat maps going on or whatever. I don't know, or screen recordings.
They're definitely monitoring a heap of data. Yeah, the apps. Like, to be honest, the only reason I've used one of the apps recently was to find the DOM element. And apart from that, like, I know there's definitely benefits for using the member stack one or using the WISD one, but I would just rather. I usually work with two screens, and instead of having something like an app layered on top of the Webflow Designer, I'd rather just like pivot between the two screens. That for me, that's just a faster solution.
Yeah.
Than what the difficulty with the apps is where'd you put them? Like, there's no space, so they have to kind of have it as a pop up. And if you've noticed the way some people have done like app tutorials, or they're like, hey, this is the new app that I'm building. They're constantly like moving it around, like it's in the way of what you're writing, like what you're coding essentially. So it's difficult. Like, I don't know where they can, unless there's like a whole section that is apps. I don't see a better solution right now. But yeah, and maybe that's why I haven't really delved into apps too much. But it could also be that I'm just I like my process. I like having member stack opened, and I like having, if I'm using Wiz opened, and even like Slater has an app. I like writing in Slater, and then having the live site open and seeing the changes and refreshing. So I don't see necessarily the benefit right now for some of the apps, but yeah, it's impressive to see the amount of problems people are solving in the app space. It's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, no, it is really cool, and like I think that's one of the powers of obviously we met loads of people in London there, and there's so much talent there that's not necessarily just design talent or dev talent. Well, obviously design and dev talent, but they just love solving problems in products. It's just and they're building stuff that they might not have this super role of clients, big name clients that they work with all day, but they're super good at getting under the skin of an API and working out how it works and rolling out an app and just doing it and just coming up with something that feels super small, but they've spent evenings and weekends doing this and building it, and then we can use it. Like, whoa, it hasn't gone through some big product QA and waited for a launch profile and PR story behind it. It's just got like, I'm just going to make I think it's Diego's Better Shadows app. It's like I can't wait until I just use it because the guys just rolled it out. Boom, boom, boom. It went from a Twitter, hey, what about shadows, to I can use what he just built. It's amazing. Yeah. And I haven't paid anything for it either. It's not like a plugin where I've paid for something. It's all relatively free now at the moment, isn't it? So yeah, it'd be interesting how because that's going to get busy. And I think there's a few like UI things that they need to sort out in terms of finding apps, filtering apps, all those kind of things in the outside of the designer that maybe they'll address over time. So, but yeah, things are happening quickly though. These are like a year ago we would not be talking about all this stuff, and then 12 months. Like I think what I've done personally in my life in 12 months, apart from having a kid, but that was
just a small thing.
I didn't do much. Well, I did a little bit, but then the rest of it wasn't really me. So, and then what these guys are.
You've got a second child that you're making sure survives every day. Like it's no biggie.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm chatting to you on a
Definitely
podcast.
What Webflow did to the UI and the designer is far greater than you being a parent.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, yeah, that is very true. Yeah, I should definitely not complain about the designer anymore. They've got it so much harder. No, anyway, yeah, that was a good session on the UI. I think that was good. We've done 53 minutes. So again, if you've reached this far in our nattering, well done. Yeah, well done.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know what did we say last time. You can message Alan or myself, DM us on Twitter, and next week I think what we're going to talk about next week.
If there's a topic you want us to talk shite about, essentially.
Yeah.
And if you're willing to listen 53 minutes about us go around in circles about the UI with no structure, just
no structure, no visuals. You just got to believe what we're saying.
Yeah.
And visualize it as you're walking around your park on your walk or doing your run.
Being that normal person talking to themselves.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, no, I think a recommendation is just check yourself. Like check you're not talking to yourself when you're walking around, because it just looks a little bit odd. I will be doing that this afternoon when I take the dog out. So
good stuff.
But I think next week maybe we might have to talk about the DOM, the new DOM thing.
Yeah, let's talk about the excitement around the DOM.
Is it a person? Is it an animal? What is it? What is this magical DOM thing?
What is the DOM?
Yeah.
Why is it so exciting?
Yeah, and
what can you
why
do
is
with
it?
the DOM?
Why is it quite tricky? It's the DOM is tricky.
Let's
not go into it now. Sorry, I teed you up there and just cut
There's
you
a few
off,
things. There's a few things that could make our lives easier if if weren't hard baked into Webflow for sure.
Yeah, damn Webflow, doing a shit job. No, only joking. I love it.
Okay, so in this episode, IKEA are not going to sponsor us, and Webflow are not going to sponsor us. So like, pow pow.
Yeah.
Well done.
Our money-making dream has finished on episode 2.
Yeah,
Right. Okay. Well, check you later.
All right. Thanks very much, Matt.
That was
talk to you.
was class. That was class. That one.
That was style.
That was bad. Dad jokes. There we go.
Okay.
Bye.
See you later.
Bye.
Good luck. Bye.
We're still recording. I can't stop the recording. It says it's stopping, but I don't know if it's stopping.
Can I just leave?
Me and technology, I tell you, honestly, it's meant. We're gonna have to cut this bit out, I think. Alan, say something. Don't leave me on my own here.
As a producer of this technology.
Yeah, it's not.
What does the mark clip button?
Oh, we're uploading. Okay, we're uploading. That's good.
It still says record on my side.
I know. Should I refresh? I'm going to refresh. I don't want to refresh. Yeah, I think it stopped. I'm going to refresh. Well, it's 99%.
Oh my god, it's 20 past 1.
I know. Right. Okay. We'll catch you later.
Good luck.
Good luck. Good work.
Well done. Has it stopped recording? Yeah, it is. It's 57 point. Oh no, it's still going up.
I know. I'm going to end the session now. Okay.
Just like leave?